In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to balance warm and cool light into color line out like this and make it look like this. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video to see exactly how I do this. If you're new to this channel, I make art tutorials for coloring comics and I share beginner artist tips and advice for young artists starting out and seasoned veterans. So you can click the link above to check out other tutorials I've made and be sure to subscribe to my channel to see more content that I'll be putting out in the long run. So first of all, we have this amazing image from Nana Grace Wind. I found it on ArtStation and I'm just going to be referencing some colors from this image. So one thing about that image is it's really warm, and those are the kind of colors that I intend to bring into the character on this image that I'm working on right now from Hicham Habchi. He's a really fantastic illustrator and I love coloring all his line art. So like I said, first thing I did was just make the background a little bit warmer, and then I used blues on the character, but all the colors I'm going to use on the character are going to be based off warm colors, and the only cool color I'm going to have on his costume is going to be towards his hat, which is blue, but all the other elements of his clothes, the bag he's carrying, his shirts, his trousers, his shoes, I'm going to leave all those as warm colors, and then I'll just slightly desaturate some to create some variety in the character. Now this is something you want to consider when doing your character designs. You want to consider how you're using colors and which colors you're going to use to create a certain kind of mood, a certain kind of feel for the character. So like I mentioned earlier in a different tutorial, I like to use usually 3 color themes when creating a character, and then I'll have like a contrasting color and the other colors are going to be harmonious colors. So for this image, my harmonious colors are the warm tones, the oranges, the reds, and a little bit of the browns, while the contrasting colors are going to be the blues, and then I have a little bit of purple. That's just a dash of purple in some places just to throw in some interest. And then if you watch the video till the end, you'll see that I'll have his glasses as a really bright shiny orange. So right now I was thinking of just making sure that everything was going to stick with the warm theme I had in my head. So I was making his powers red, but I later changed my mind and made them blue, so they'll kind of pop out, and when you see the character you can tell that his costume is warm yellows and oranges, and then the blue power will just stand out. It will be contrasting because of all the warm colors that are surrounding it. So that's how I like to use contrasting colors. So a color will only stand out depending on the other colors that are surrounding that color. So if you have a warm color and you put it in the middle of a lot of cool colors like blue, orange, blues, purples, a little bit of greens, and then you put a warm orange there, even though that orange is desaturated, you're going to feel the presence of that warm color there because it's surrounded by a lot of cool colors, and that works the same way when you have a cool color surrounded by a lot of warm colors, just like how I have in my image here where I have the blue powers on his hands and he's surrounded by the warm tones of his skin, the warm color of his jacket and his pants. So that's why it's really popping out there, even though it's not as saturated as I want it to be at the end of the image. So right now you can see that I'm choosing a green, but I'm still not deviating. I'm not choosing a green that's towards the blues. I'm choosing a green that's a little bit towards the browns, and I even go ahead and just change it to just be a brown color because I want to make sure that everything that I'm doing on the character is going to still stick with that theme of warm versus cool. And then for my lighting choice right now, I really haven't thought of a light source, but I'm thinking of just making it a half lighting, and I'm going to bring in a light source coming from the right direction, kind of behind him on the right hand side, and then it's going to be cut off by an object that's blocking the light source. So I'll have all the cool colors down below on the bottom part of his body. So right now, this is something I just started doing recently. I usually did this at the end, but now I like to just add in some variations, and this is why I love studying other artists. Now I started doing this after taking a look at Sergi Brosa's work and seeing how he incorporated textures and other design elements into his work, and now I've started doing it in my own work too, and it's a really good technique. You can always do it in your own work and see how it works for you. So what I just did was I created a multiply layer above all the layers of the character, and then I filled it with blue, and then I'm cutting out where the light source is hitting, and that is going to be that's where I'm going to have the warm colors, and then I'll just fill that with orange to further push and increase the vibrance and saturation of that warm tone. So I want it to feel like maybe he's kind of sitting in a sunset area. I think I have to do a tutorial where I paint a full image and show you how this technique works with backgrounds and all that. So I'm going to consider doing that maybe next week. I'll do a full image where I have backgrounds and characters, and then show you how the lighting will work with the background and the character as well. So I'll just be using lighting clues from the background, and I'll use that to color the character. So right now I'm just thinking he's getting hit by this warm light source coming from the right hand side, and it's kind of like a sunset mood that I'm going for. So I'm just using triangles to pretty much raise the highlights and where light is hitting. And why I love using triangles is it's just my own design language. I love using triangles, and you can try and use whatever shape you feel like, but why I love using triangles is it really resonates with Hisham's work because he has a lot of angles in his drawings. So I'll use triangles to just further push that angular design, the angular shape language he has in his drawing. So if I was coloring another person's lineup that doesn't use a lot of sharp edges, I definitely won't be using this technique. I'll probably be using a smoother and more softer approach to color lineups like that. So you have to think about the technique that the artist is using before you just go ahead and just start coloring the drawing. So if you're the one that's drawing, I'll believe that you have already understood the kind of technique, the kind of art style you're going for, and you just have to emphasize that with your colors as well. So if you have a more smoother approach to drawing, I'll suggest you use a smoother and cleaner approach to coloring as well. So right now I'm just using an overlay layer and increasing the blue hues in that shadow to emphasize that cool light that's probably coming in from the sky, because if an object is blocking where that light source is and the sky is blue above it, the ambient light source from the sky is going to fill in all the shadows. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just painting in where that ambient light is hitting, and I'm using an overlay layer, and I'm using kind of a bright blue, a little bit saturated, but I'm going to still dial down the saturation and just make everything just a tad bit more desaturated, especially within those shadows, so I can keep your focus on the character's face and just draw you in before you start looking around at what's happening in the shadows and other places, other areas in the image. So you want to keep the viewers focus on one spot in the image and then have less detail in other areas. So if you're looking at this image now, I want your attention to directly go to his face because it's a character. So I'm going to use as much elements and saturation that I can to make you just look at the face. So if you see the final image, you see that his face has more tones, is more fleshy, is more saturated, has a lot of colors, and is vibrant. And well, in the shadows is a little bit more desaturated and just blue. So once you look at the image, you just directly go up and look at his face. So that's what you want to do when you have characters like this. Pull the viewer's eye, pull his attention to one part in the image, and then gradually let the viewer's eye just wander around and just investigate other areas in the image. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just emphasizing more darks in the image, and I'm using a multiply layer to do this. And I just choose a really dark blue color, and then I just gradually paint in darker shapes, darker triangles in the areas that lights are not hitting. And then in my ambient occlusions, I make sure those are the darkest areas because they're ambient occlusions. Lights cannot hit there at all. Just like the crevice in his pants where his hands are touching his body, those places are going to be the darkest areas because light cannot reach there at all. That's what an ambient occlusion is. So right now I'm still using that multiply layer, and I'm basically just using same blue, everything is just, and I'm just pretty much about to start painting in like the main highlights of the image. So I painted the highlights for the bright side, the warm tones, but I didn't do that for the cool shadow area. So that's what I'm doing right now. But what I'm noticing is it's a little bit brighter than usual. It's getting too bright. So what I did later on was just use a mask and just erase some parts of the highlight. So I dialed it down a little bit so it's not too distracting in the final image. And then all this I'm just doing that on a linear dodge layer. I love to use the linear dodge layer because it kind of it does the same thing as the screen layer does, but it just keeps more saturation on the character. And then right now I'll just use a soft light layer to just increase the vibrance on those warm tones, and then add some color variations on his nose where blood will flow through, where you can see the blood under his skin. And then I'll do the same thing on his ears. And right now I'm just using a layer set to linear dodge also, and it's at the top of all the layers, and that's what I'm using to paint his glasses. So I just fill it in with a saturated color and then just use a brighter color to paint in just a little bit where that light is coming from and hitting the glasses. So you want to consider how light will affect the glasses and how the glasses will glow when they're being hit by light. So right now I can see that the image is beginning to pop a little bit, but I want to add some more contrast on his face. I feel like I can give him a little beard, nothing too distracting, and I was trying to make it dark, but I just thought that a brighter color will make the character more interesting. So I just made his beard a little bit white, and I just cut out some fancy shapes and just made the character just a little bit more interesting than usual. And the last thing I do is to just use a linear dodge layer. I think throughout this tutorial I've just been using a lot of linear dodge layers, and then I just use that to paint in his the smoke, the fire, the smoke effects on his hand. I love painting effects, and I've said this before, but I'll probably just take my time and do a proper effect tutorial maybe next week. And another artist you can look up to that does really nice art that has really fancy effects like this is Dave Greco, and also Mike Azevedo and Max Greg. You can check them out. They have really fantastic art that looks like Blizzard work, so you should check them out. I love to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you for letting me do what I do. And if you love to support my work and my channel, you could go down and click the link in the description to subscribe to my Patreon page. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video. Peace.